President Trump, who was here in Las Vegas today, saying he has total confidence in the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. That comment after Tillerson praised the president's approach to foreign policy while sidestepping a report that he called the commander-in-chief something pretty unpresidential.
Could you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that. I mean, this is what I don't understand about Washington. Again, you know, I'm not from this place, but the places I come from, we don't deal with that kind of petty nonsense.
Back with now Bob Cusack, Margaret Hoover, and David Swerdlick. Okay, so let's talk about this. Margaret, your reaction to Rex Tillerson not denying reports that he called the president a moron during a private meeting.
Yeah, it's not a good look when your spokesperson comes out and outright denies it, but the principal himself doesn't deny it. It just leaves a little bit of room for opening, and it makes you wonder. I mean, the speculation is always, well, what if there's tape of it, or what if there's an email, or what if there's some kind of proof of it? Maybe that's why he didn't want to sort of put it out there. But the more substantive point here is that the Secretary of State today scrambled a press conference in order to say that a rumor about how what he said about the president isn't true. That what you see is this sort of unraveling, this public unraveling between the president and the Secretary of State, an effort by the Secretary of State and the State Department to mitigate that damage. And we've seen this before in the Trump administration with senior officials. I mean, we saw it with the first NSC director. We've seen it with Bannon. We saw it with Reince Priebus, the chief of staff. So you wonder if Tillerson's just a man not long for this world. In the Trump administration, that is.
I don't
mean in the larger sense.
I'm glad you clarified that.
You.
Yeah. So Republican Senator Bob Corker had more criticism for the Trump administration today. Watch this.
Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and Chief of Staff Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos. I think he's in a very trying situation, trying to solve many of the world's problems, a lot of times without the kind of support and help that I'd like to see him have.
Bob, that's pretty harsh indictment, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's a direct shot at the president, without a doubt. And Republicans, including John McCain, generally like the people that Trump has around him, but have been very critical of Trump. Trump has taken some shots at Corker, and Corker's not running for re-election, so he's kind of a free agent. The last thing is the State Department is just not as strong as it used to be, because whatever you think of President Trump, he's not diplomatic. He says what's on his mind. Diplomats don't do that. So I think that the State Department overall has not the best morale, and partly because they're not as powerful as they used to be.
David, what do you think he meant by separating our country from chaos?
Well, I mean, there's one theory that, you know, there's this sort of thin line of folks who are, you know, the cooler heads prevailing against some of the president's more mercurial instincts. And I do think that now that Senator Corker has announced that he's not running for re-election, he probably feels freer to say some stuff like that. He made some comments a few weeks ago. But you know, you have to really read between the lines and figure out what they're saying. I think, if anything, some of these folks are signaling to other Republicans that it's okay to distinguish their position from the president if they feel like they have to do that.
Thank you, panel. I appreciate that. When we come back, new video tonight.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson addressed media reports that he considered leaving his post and was advised by Vice President Pence to stay on. His remarks from the treaty room at the State Department are about 10 minutes.
Morning. There were some news reports this morning that I want to address. First, my commitment to the success of our president and our country is as strong as it was the day I accepted his offer to serve as Secretary of State. President Trump's America First agenda has given voice to millions who felt completely abandoned by the political status quo and who felt their interests came second to those of other countries. President Trump's foreign policy goals break the mold of what people traditionally think is achievable on behalf of our country. We're finding new ways to govern that deliver new victories. Our job is now to achieve results on behalf of America, and we are doing that. We've created international unity around our peaceful pressure campaign against North Korea, including influencing China to exert unprecedented economic influence on North Korea. At the Riyadh summit, the President rallied Muslim-majority nations to assume new responsibilities for stopping terrorism. NATO members are now contributing more to shared security. And our approach to South Asia, and specifically Afghanistan, means building upon our relationships with India and Pakistan to stamp out terrorism and support the Afghan government in providing security for their own people. And ISIS's fraudulent caliphate in Iraq and Syria is on the brink of being completely extinguished, thanks to an aggressive new strategy led by the President. What we have accomplished, we have done as a team. Similarly, Secretary Mnuchin has levied economic sanctions on North Korea and related entities. Countries must increasingly decide whether they will do business with North Korea or with the community of peace-loving nations. Ambassador Haley has spearheaded and achieved enormous success, passing the toughest UN sanctions to date on North Korea. General Mattis and I communicate virtually every day, and we agree that there must be the highest level of coordination between our diplomatic efforts and our military efforts. You can't have a stronger partner than a Secretary of Defense who embraces diplomacy. And I hope he feels he has the partner he needs at the State Department. And this is just the beginning of the list of partners and friends across the government who are all working for the American people. There's much to be done, and we're just getting started. To address a few specifics that have been erroneously reported this morning. The Vice President has never had to persuade me to remain as Secretary of State because I have never considered leaving this post. I value the friendship and the counsel of the Vice President, and I admire his leadership within President Trump's administration to address the many important agendas of President Trump, both from a foreign policy perspective and a domestic objective. Let me tell you what I've learned about this president, whom I did not know before taking this office. He loves his country. He puts Americans and America first. He's smart. He demands results wherever he goes, and he holds those around him accountable for whether they've done the job he's asked them to do. Accountability is one of the bedrock values the President and I share. While I'm new to Washington, I have learned that there are some who try to sow dissension to advance their own agenda by tearing others apart in an effort to undermine President Trump's own agenda. I do not, and I will not operate that way. And the same applies to everyone on my team here at the State Department. When I wake up in the morning, my first thoughts are about the safety of our citizens at home and abroad. There's no more important responsibility I carry with me than ensuring that Americans are safe. Providing for the security of the United States must be the #1 goal of our American foreign policy. President Trump and his administration will keep moving forward as one team with one mission, doing great things for the United States of America to make America great again. Thank you.
Is that the only thing that you consider to be erroneous in that article?
I think it's the most important element of the article is to reaffirm my commitment to this role that President Trump's asked me to serve and to dispel with this notion that I have ever considered leaving. I have answered that question repeatedly. For some reason, it continues to be misreported. There's never been a consideration in my mind to leave. I serve at the appointment of the President, and I'm here for as long as the President feels I can be useful to achieving his objectives.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with Secretary Mattis that the United States should stay in the JCPOA?
We'll have a recommendation for the President. We're going to give him a couple of options of how to move forward to advance the important policy towards Iran. As you've heard us say many times, the JCPOA represents only a small part of the many issues that we need to deal with when it comes to the Iranian relationship. So it is an important part of that, but it is not the only part. And I've said many times we cannot let the Iranian relationship be defined solely by that nuclear agreement.
Could you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or ideas are
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that. I mean, this is what I don't understand about Washington. Again, you know, I'm not from this place. But the places I come from, we don't deal with that kind of petty nonsense. And it is intended to do nothing but divide people. And I'm just not going to be part of this effort to divide this administration.
Mr. Secretary, did you speak with the President about the report? Did he ask you to make a statement? Or is
I have not spoken to the President this morning. I think he's on his way to Las Vegas, is my understanding.
Secretary, do you have a partner in Islamabad? You just met the foreign minister. Do you have a reliable partner in Pakistan now after meeting the foreign minister of Pakistan earlier today?
Yes, I believe we do. You know, I think the Pakistan relationship and the U.S. relationship is extraordinarily important regionally. And as we rolled out the South Asia strategy, we spoke about it in a regional context. It is not just about Afghanistan. This is about the importance of Pakistan and Pakistan's long-term stability as well. We have concerns about the future of Pakistan's government too, in terms of them. We want their government to be stable. We want it to be peaceful. And many of the same issues they're struggling with inside of Pakistan are our issues. So we think there is opportunity for us to strengthen that relationship. We're going to be working very hard at all levels, from the State Department to the Defense Department to our intelligence communities, as well as economic commerce opportunities as well. So it really is a regional approach, and Pakistan is critical, I think, to the long-term stability of the region. Thank you very much.
North Korea.
State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert commented on Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's remarks today. She said the president did not ask him to make the comments and that Tillerson spoke to the president after. Here's a look.
Secretary Tillerson, along with the rest of us, woke up this morning to some news reports. There were news reports that caused many of us, including the Secretary, concern. You've all seen it. You all know what I'm talking about. It's a report that the Secretary said just a few hours ago is clearly erroneous. The Secretary addressed that a few hours ago with all of you, and many of you had the opportunity to ask the Secretary a few questions yourselves. The Secretary chose to speak to the media. He was not asked to do this. He knew it was the right thing to do. As a man, he is clear, he is direct, and he pulls no punches. He is not a politician who seeks the spotlight. And many in foreign policy and media circles simply don't understand that. They think, why would somebody not want to be in front of television cameras all the time? That is not who this person is. Secretary Tillerson came to Washington to do a job. He came to Washington to serve his country. He came to Washington to serve the Trump administration. He came here to advance U.S. foreign policy goals. And he also came here, as we've seen this week, to keep Americans safe. I'm referring to the news, what happened in Cuba, and the decision to bring home our Americans who were serving down there. That is the Secretary's top priority. The Secretary has never considered resigning from his post, and for those who want him to do so, go ahead and keep pushing, because that will only strengthen his resolve. In my family's part of the country, we would call that a tough old bird. Some people may not get that, but where I'm from, that's what we call it. In other circles, it might be called battle-hardened. Regardless, the Secretary is committed to staying here at the State Department and doing that job. I think he was very clear about that today. I spoke with him a short while ago, and I wanted to update you on one thing in particular. He spoke with the President after the Secretary's press comments to all of you earlier today, and he told me that, Heather, it was, quote, a good conversation, and that they are all good. I take the Secretary at his word.
Thanks, Heather. Sticking with that topic,
Yeah.
Hi. I know that you called that report erroneous. Secretary did not declined several opportunities this morning to dispute one particular part of that report, which is the idea that he called the president a moron. And I want to know whether you are comfortable with the fact that the widespread perception is that he did not dispute that part of the report because it's true.
Well, let me clarify that. The Secretary does not use that type of language. The Secretary did not use that type of language to speak about the President of the United States. He does not use that language to speak about anyone. So I hope that that clarifies it.
He never said that.
He did not say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Bob Corker briefs reporters on a series of unexplained health incidents that have affected 22 U.S. Embassy personnel in Havana, Cuba. The Trump administration has since ordered the expulsion of nearly 2/3 of Cuban diplomatic personnel from the United States. Here are Senator Corker's remarks following a closed-door briefing.
No.
And did they give you any idea if they had any leads about anything?
No. Look, we don't know what's causing it, but what we do know is that U.S. personnel have been targeted. And therefore, we've taken steps, the administration has taken steps to protect U.S. personnel that was in fact being targeted. And we know that, look, I don't think anybody doubts the fact that the Cuban government, from an intelligence agency standpoint, has, they have control of their island, okay? Nobody's accusing them necessarily of having done this, okay? It could be rogue elements within the administration, but what we are saying is we know you guys have the ability to figure this out, okay? The Cuban government has many, many, many deficiencies, okay? More than most in the world. But one thing they're not deficient on is intelligence gathering, okay? They know everything that's going on inside that country, and so what we've said to them is, look, we're not saying it's you, but what we're saying is we want it ended, and we want you guys to figure out a way of ending it. You control the island, we know that, end it. So that's all. I mean, I support the policy.
Senator, you have a close working relationship with Secretary Tillerson. There's reports that he called the president a moron this summer, and I know there were different issues that you were working with him over time.
Okay.
Correct. But what do you make of this reporting, and have you personally heard from Tillerson that he was frustrated at any point in time?
Look, I don't talk about private conversations with anyone inappropriately. I don't anyway. I think Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and Chief of Staff Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos, and I support them very much. And I don't know what he may have said after the briefing. I watch from, look, I see what's happening here. I deal with people throughout the administration, and he, from my perspective, is in an incredibly frustrating place where, as I watch, okay, and I can watch very closely on many occasions, he ends up not being supported in the way that I would hope a Secretary of State would be supported, and that's just from my vantage point. And but I've never, I have no knowledge of the comments or anything else. I think he's in a very trying situation, trying to solve many of the world's problems, a lot of times without the kind of support and help that I'd like to see him have.
Do you ever think about resigning at any point in time?
I can't get into that, yeah.
When you say that Tillerson, Mattis, and Kelly are separating this country from chaos, do you mean from the president's chaos?
Well, it's just they act in a very, they work very well together to make sure that the policies we put forth around the world are sound and coherent. There are other people within the administration, in my belief, that don't. Okay, I'm sorry. So I hope I hope they stay because they're valuable to the national security of our nation. They're valuable to to us putting forth good policies. They're very valuable as it relates to our citizens feeling safe and secure, and I hope he's here for a long time.
Senator Corker, Secretary Mattis yesterday said the Iran nuclear deal is in the national security interest of the United States. He would recommend staying in it as long as Iran's in compliance. Can you respond to that? And should Congress listen to the generals in this case? Because General Gunford essentially agrees with him.
Yeah, I don't know why you're saying anything about Congress.
If this comes back to Congress to vote on sanctions, additional sanctions for Iran.
I think there's more happening here than meets the eye, and you know, we've been working with the administration for a long time, and I mean, I know what's likely getting ready to happen, and so I think you're asking a conjectured question that may be not fully understanding what may be actually taking place here. Okay.
Can I ask you then, do you agree with Secretary
Mattis?
Do you agree with that the deal is in the interest of national security?
As I've said before, you can only tear these things up one time. You know, it might feel good for a second, but you know, one of the things that's important for us is to keep our allies with us, especially our Western allies, so there are ways of dealing with this that can deal with the deficiencies that we all know are there, and the agreement potentially stay in place. So I'll just leave it like that. Okay. All right.
Getting back to Tillerson for a second, if he's calling the president a moron, which she's not denying that.
Please don't put me